Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. In this edition, much of the North American cornfields remain unplanted because of devastating floods and wet weather in general. We look at the implications for New Zealand grain and food industries. ETS, the emissions trading scheme. Critics claim it's a destructive change for agriculture. Whether you agree with it or not, it's sure to be an election hottie. We ask, what are the costs and what are the benefits? And Shrek, the elusive merino wether from Bendigo Station, dies at the age of 16. We look at the impact this unlikely hero has had on the country and on kids with cancer. Joining me today is Rob Macnab of Rural Business Solutions and John Janssen, Senior Partner, Agribusiness for B&Z. Welcome, guys. I've just returned from a trip to the States, and what I saw was a lot of corn not being planted. Corn that has been planted on the strips around the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers, wiped out by floods. I've got friends in Canada, they have not been able to plant any of their corn. What's the medium-term implication for this?
Well, one of the first things we're going to be looking for is towards what the effect is it's going to have on beef prices, because obviously corn is a large input into the feedlots in the US. So if the corn is in short supply, that means that the production cost of beef is going to go up. Hopefully the retail price of beef will go up as well, and we can follow a further commodity surge in the beef prices. Never like to look well on ill of other farmers, but this one could have a silver lining for us.
John, what are you thinking out there with you know, we've seen oil drop a little bit. They're talking about commodity prices softening a little bit. Do you think this corn issue is going to hold the price of some of our core commodities like dairy and beef, like Rob's suggesting?
It's an interesting one, the corn one in the States, because I just saw in the news before we came in, the Mexican government buying out 2 years to secure corn for the States. You've also got about 40% of that crop goes into biofuels. So I think there's some longer term structural issues around the corn in the States which should be supportive of commodity prices across the board.
I've also heard that some of the corn crops are actually becoming a little bit resistant, some of the pests and bugs in that, with the GE resistance for Roundup, the Roundup Ready corn, I should say. What do you think that's going to do, coupled with this? Are we looking at a corn crisis? I mean,
it's like the drench with lambs, isn't it? You're sort of trusting the scientists to come up with new and better ways of innovating for these things. But I mean, certainly supplies are as tight as they've ever been across the board. You've got China. I mean, it produces something like 530 million tonnes of its own grain, and there's a 30 million tonne deficit, which is growing. So I think certainly, continuing shortages in corn probably a likely outcome. So
how do you think this impacts on balanced agri-nutrients move to secure a feed industry that, with Seals grain and I can't think of the other one that's down in, given that they basically are net importers of grain, how's it going to impact on that move?
Yes, they may be net importers of grain, but you're talking about two family firms there with not a lot of scale. So they actually purchased a lot of New Zealand grain as well. So they underpinned the New Zealand grain economy. Perhaps with the economies of scale, they could perhaps bring it in cheaper from overseas. New Zealand grain farmers are good at what they do, but they also have to face up to the reality of what it is in the world. Grain prices are pretty strong. They'll remain strong for a while. And I think that New Zealand grain farmers will have no issue in selling their product.
The emissions trading scheme, guys, Labor is suggesting that if they get in, they're going to bring it in. $800 million reward to the economy, they're suggesting, over 5 years. Is this a goodie or a baddie?
And it's a tough question, isn't it? I mean, it's too early to tell. Certainly we've seen through some of the carbon forestry initiatives that are around, there's some opportunity for people to grow some wealth in that sector. Around the cost issues, it comes back to what we talked about earlier around price of commodities. I mean, it's an input cost plus margin game at the end of the day. So as long as we're not out of step with what's happening elsewhere in the world, I can't, you back New Zealand to be more efficient at bringing in anything else than anyone else, but it wouldn't be the sort of thing we'd look to lead, and that's sort of been the position of the current government, which we're reasonably supportive of.
I think it would be absolute folly to consider it a reward to the economy to rob it from one sector that's performing well and put it into general coffers, which may even go offshore as well. This country needs agriculture like it's never needed it before to drag us out of this recession, to export our way out. And the present rules are that it's not going to happen until 2015. And if somebody wants to make an election issue out of it this year, it probably shows their lack of depth and knowledge of what's happening in the economy.
But isn't that also scary? That, because I agree with what you're saying. Not only that they show a lack of depth of their understanding of the New Zealand economy, but for agriculture in general. I mean, how scary is this as a signal to New Zealand agriculture that with this one move, it's going to be, from what Beef and Lamb New Zealand are saying, $4,000 per sheep and beef farmer and nearly $12,000 per dairy farmer. Now, I don't know how many dairy farms or sheep and cattle farms that can sustain what is essentially a net loss to the business.
You've got to recall too, that sheep and beef farmers and dairy farmers are already paying for the emission trading scheme through their power, through their fuel. So direct costs is just going to be another imposition and will further erode the margins. The pastoral sector has to get on its feet. It has to be strong, it has to be wealthy, because when it's wealthy, the country will return to wealth as well.
Speaking of getting back on its feet, Shrek died at the age of 16 down at Bendigo Station. What a phenomenon. Now, Rob, I know that you've met Shrek, haven't you?
I've spent time with Shrek and more importantly spent time with John Perriam.
Isn't he amazing? Inspirational New Zealander.
Yeah. Shrek was a phenomenon, a 16, 17-year-old wether, tame when it came out of the hills. I know that the cynic in you, Mandy, may be questioning that, but it's not, as John Perriam said, it's not about the sheep, it's about the story. And look, when he made the wise decision, perhaps it might have been foolish, to share him on the iceberg that disappeared the day after he shore it on, the hits that Icebreaker got on their website from the US. You know, perhaps John and Anne Scanlon, perhaps they could go up to the Wanganui River and find another one, because we could do with another one.
But it's one on your place up there, is there, Rob?
Always find one.
John, have you guys got any, has the BNZ got any idea of how much that Shrek has added to our New Zealand economy? I mean, we know that there's been a couple of $100,000 go into his charity, Cure for Kids with Cancer, but surely...
Yeah, look, it's certainly a great success story, and it really is a triumph of marketing as much as anything else. It just shows, you look at some of these entrepreneurs we have in the industry, what great untapped potential there is there to do more of that sort of thing. So certainly, specific numbers I probably couldn't tell you, Mandy, but certainly a great success story for New Zealand.
So how do we keep this going? How do we keep John Perriam moving forward? How do we unearth the next John Perriam? They're
out there, and they have fantastic stories to tell. And I think that's what, as rural people, we undervalue the stories that we can tell that can have a connection. I think of Kim down in the Manawatu Gorge with I think it was cow 362.
Oh, floating down the river in the floods. Yeah.
Those sorts of stories happen every single day on farms. And farmers and their families just go, well, that's just a unique thing. Oh, well, we'll carry on with it. We've got to get out there and tell the story, because that's what's going to get us the extra margin in the market, is our story. OK, coming up after the break, the $6 billion question. How much of New Zealand can the Chinese buy with this? Does New Zealand agriculture need what many may claim is a disruptive change to future-proof itself? And German agricultural economist Dr. Torsten Hemming believes that 80% of dairy products are produced by family farms. So what are we doing to ensure that these continue? You'll find out after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. In Country 99 TV News, it appears that China has set aside $6 billion to invest in our country. Not satisfied with the possible purchase of Crayford Farms, it seems that the Chinese are interested in buying anything that's big enough and complementary to Chinese interests. John, what's your take on this? Are we going to do what Australia's done, open the gate up for foreign investment, then slam it once the horse is bolted?
Look, I think the thing with China is that, having been over there, they've got an insatiable thirst for our product. And the Chinese government's number one concern is feeding its people.
Absolutely.
And they're highly concerned about their ability to do that. We talked earlier in the show about the feed gap around grain. So they're looking to integrate their supply chains around the world. So in answer to the question, how much of New Zealand will they buy? And the answer is probably as much as we will let them to. And if you look at the yields on New Zealand farming at the moment, you can see why now's an attractive time for them to do that. But these are discussions that we're having as a country, and I think they're positive.
Positive in terms of the fact that we need foreign investment, or positive in the fact that the question is coming up, how much foreign investment do we allow and where do we allow it?
Do we have the luxury of having that discussion? The fundamental is that New Zealand farmers have had a debt-fueled party for too long. And fine, if somebody else is going to rock up and pay $6 billion for that land with cash, then that will be that'll be the answer. But we don't have that luxury in this country anymore. We've had our fun, now we've got to pay the piper. So I think there's a much larger fundamental play here than whether or not we just open it up for foreign ownership.
Yes, but my understanding is they're not just interested in buying land, it's any assets that fit within the scope of Chinese interests, processing facilities, real estate, you know, you name it. So it's not just about, you know, the Farmers' Party, it's about New Zealand in general. And is there a New Zealand Inc. question that should be held around this?
I think certainly there is. I mean, why do they want to invest in New Zealand? It's because they see that they like our brand around our clean green image. In China, New Zealand dairy product especially is very highly rated. And so the Chinese obviously see some value in that New Zealand brand. And the question for us, I guess, is maybe are we missing that value?
Yes, yeah.
And I think it's what we really need to be discussing as a country around, you know, are we seeing, is there value there that we're not seeing and not capturing?
I mean, I guess, Rob, are the Chinese being the John Perriam? They're actually looking and seeing something that once they have seen it and showed it to us, that we'll go, oh yeah. I mean, do we really value our own brands?
So I'm a glass half full sort of guy. So I'm saying that if they're willing to bring in $6 billion, they want a return from it. And they're going to work really hard. And they're going to bring some creative, innovative things in. And $6 billion is not a heck of a lot of New Zealand, is it? So we're going to get some, like the old mill pond, throw a stone into a mill pond and the ripples will go far and far. So yeah, bring it in, bring it on, and let's grow everybody's wealth together.
I'm afraid I'm going with John on this one. I think there's a lot more questions to be asked about it, but that's okay. We'll start. You let me know when you start speaking Chinese, and we'll continue this conversation. Now, disruptive change, defined as an irrevocable change to the future. New Zealand dairy industry has been through a number of those, with deregulation, with the formation of a super co-op with Fonterra, with the dries changing the way we start thinking about farming from a pastoral base. Do you think we need another one for the New Zealand agricultural sector to remain sustainable and competitive?
I think we do. I think we're overdue for the next step change to come through, and the only way that I see that step change coming through is from our strength in pastoral science, and we're massively underfunding it at the moment. We don't have those next rising stars out there. We need to find them, we need to nurture them, we need to grow them, we need to get them focused on taking agriculture to the next level. So it's got to come through that, so we're well overdue for it.
Look, I'd pick up on Rob's point there around, I think it's a generational thing. You know, average age farmers, mid-50s, sheep and beef even older than that. And you know, there's only so much of your life where you can be really pushing the envelope, and that goes throughout the whole industry. So, you know, I'm optimistic that as we see the sort of the next generation coming through, that we'll get some of these advances and we'll get a little bit of steam up.
John, do you think that the current generation that's coming up, I guess our generation, do you think that we're hungry enough to be innovative like our parents were, with that number 8 wired attitude? Or are we looking for technology to solve our problems without having to work hard at it?
It's kind of it's an affliction of the Western world, really, isn't it? I mean, it's another thing when you reflect on the emerging economies. They're just so keen to make a dollar, you know, they're sort of hustling and bustling around to make money wherever they can. And I guess it's quite comfortable for us because we don't, you know, because our parents have made the wealth, especially in farming, which is an intergenerational business. There's pressures not so much on us to do that. So I think it's a mindset as much as anything. I don't think there's anything stopping us from reaching out and grabbing that opportunity, except ourselves and a desire to do so.
Rob, what do you think about that?
Well, I'd like to just point out the difference between, say, a herringbone shed and cloud computing, and that's where, I don't know if we're in the same generation, Mandy, but that's perhaps where my generation is looking for, is creating that next thing. We are a small South Pacific country with fantastic benefits. The people that want to buy our products are thousands upon thousands and thousands of kilometres away. We need to actually connect with that market, and that's where our generation is going to be so strong in connecting with that market, picking up on the Shrek stories and letting it go viral and telling the world about some of the things that are happening down there. So when they go to choose their merino sweater, they don't choose the $95 one from Kathmandu, they choose the $120 one from Living World or something like that.
As long as they do that and realise that there's got to be a made in New Zealand sticker on it, not necessarily a made in China sticker on it. Now, further to that, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago in Lexington with Alltech, and Dr. Torsten Hemming spoke. He's a German economist. And he talked about the fact that at least 80% of dairy products are produced by family farms internationally. That number kind of surprised me, and it really led me to think about, what are we doing with our family farms internationally to allow this to continue? Are they going to be robust, sound business models going forward into the future?
I think that one of the first things we can do, I think he's dead right, and me personally, I'd like to buy my food from a family that's committed to the land, to the stock, to the produce, because for me that gives me confidence. I think what we need to do is celebrate and hold these families up. And recently they just announced the next recipients of the 100 years stock and station rewards of families that have been on their farms for 100 years. They've been through thick and thin. This GFC is nothing compared to a depression.
So what are we doing to make sure that the next 100 years, John, where's the BNZ at? Are they going to be operating in this space?
Look, we're very much about intergenerational wealth transfer at the BNZ, and since 2001 we've been running our Farm First Growth Program, a suite of educational opportunities for clients, and succession planning has been a very, very popular one of those courses. So I think it's about families having those discussions, getting education and outside third parties when we're required to really make sure that intergenerational handover of the farm can occur. And if you look at what's happened with land prices, down a little bit, product prices up, there's never been a better time to start those land transfer projects than now.
It's really all about that family conversation first, though, isn't it? And defining the difference between estate planning and intergenerational planning.
You did right, and it does, and it starts with the families.
But do you think enough people know that? Do you think enough people are aware of the fact that estate planning is simply about asset transfer, and then there is something around business and business transfer?
Look, having done the educational programs for the last 10 years, we've had a lot of people through those programs, and the most common outcome is they go see their accountant and lawyer and get a trust and company
and an estate
structures
plan.
and an estate plan. And that hasn't solved the fundamental issue, which is, do we have a business that we can succeed to the next generation? Is it in a position that it can do that? And does the next generation want it?
Fantastic. Now, John, just quickly before we go, the BNZ Ahu Whenua Trophy. Last week, we had some winners.
We did have some winners. Waipapa 9 Trust from Taupo took out this year's sheep and beef competition, and they actually took out last year's dairy competition as well, so they are current holders of both the cups.
What do you think, just very, very quickly, what is the difference between them and the rest?
Look,
potential. We talk about the red meat sector strategy, and here we have a sector of our agriculture that has the massive potential. And I applaud the BNZ for backing this, and I think agriculture as a whole needs to perhaps get behind this and say, right, okay, let's go, let's really resource, fund, get in behind it. And so BNZ with their sponsorship of the Ahu Whenua Trophy is a wonderful thing.
Coming up after the break, we asked Rob and John what's got them hopping. Will it be a rant or will it be a rave? Stay with us and find out. Welcome back to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. Time now for our weekly rant or rave. Who wants to go first?
Oh, look, I'll start off, Mandy. Look, I got a rave this week, and it's around the BNZ Ahu Whenua Trophy and Maori farming and where they've got to. And I think it's a triumph of governance and organisation as much as anything else. And we can certainly, the rest, non-Maori New Zealand, non-Maori farming, has certainly got a lot to look up to there. And it's a competition that, although it portrays excellence in Maori farming, it's actually excellence in farming. And I'd encourage non-Maori to get across those field days. There's 3 of them each year before the finals dinner, and really understand what it is that's making that a really success story for the New Zealand economy.
Where can they go to find out about those if they don't know?
There's a website, it's ahuwhenuatrophy.org.nz, I think.
Perfect, so they encourage people to get along. Fantastic. Rob?
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have a rant, and I'm going to have a rant about the death of common sense. I'm involved with a local rural school, Waikato school, and somebody within their wisdom, within government, has decided that they will fund a centre of rehabilitation for young offenders and pee addicts next door to our school.
What?
What sort of idiot would decide that that would be a good idea? What Wally said, I'll write out the cheque. So they've put it next door to a small rural school, 30 children, and struggling to make ends meet as it is, and we have an 8-wire post and batten fence between us and, I hate to say, it's not the local community. I don't know where they're bringing these people in, but somebody, the government has decided to fund this next to an educational institute. So, death of common sense, it's right there. We can't put a cell phone tower or a wind turbine beside a school, but you can put a pee addict or a young offender. Brilliant.
Well, that's definitely a pretty good rant. But I'm going to have a rave. I want to rave about Rick Morrison and Charlene Hutching from Ekatahuna. Congratulations on being supreme winners of Balanced Farm Environments Awards and for living it as an everyday experience rather than a target. Well done. Now, I want to talk a bit more about this, Rob.
Well, it's symptomatic.
Do you feel, sorry for interrupting, but do you feel that farming in New Zealand, agricultural rural New Zealand, is starting to have to take the crap from the rest of our society? Prisons, rehab centres, are we just seen as being mugs? Is that what this is?
I think it's a dumping ground. That's what it is. It's rural, it's isolated, the people out there don't really matter, and there seems to be incredible lack of consultation about why these people, why we live there, what we enjoy about it. It gets completely shoved away very, very quickly. And right, okay, we'll just put things out there, and out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's got to stop. New Zealand's got to take responsibility for its problems and not just shove them out of the way. What would be the point of putting young offenders 35 kilometres from the nearest centre? What will they expect them to get up to?
Well, let's not speculate with a school next door, you know. What do you think about that, John?
Oh, look, it's the not my backyard syndrome a little bit, isn't it? But, I mean, this just sounds like an unbelievable situation where they've got it next to a school there. We had a similar thing when I was in Rotorua. They put a prison in there, and there's a large consultation process, and in the end, I think it was one of the local iwi stuck their hand up and said, look, we'll stick it on some land and around and the jobs opportunity that they've offered. But it's, yeah, common sense, I think, is the key here, and hopefully it prevails in this situation.
Yeah, I think it is. It's just common sense. There's probably 300,000 acres out there. There might be a little slice of it, but why would you choose next to a school?
Yeah.
There's only 2 schools, so there's plenty of space.
That is quite concerning. John, I want to also pick up on what you were talking about with the Ahu Whenua Trophy that you sponsor. What do you think it will take? Like, I mean, in previous years, have we seen a lot of non-Māori attending the Trust Day farms? Is it something that we really need to start promoting?
Oh, look, I think the attendance has been quite good from non-Māori there. And I was speaking with Georgina Tuhuhu at the awards ceremony, and she was really quite excited that agriculture was one of the places, and it's in private enterprise where Māori and non-Māori New Zealanders really come together in a very transformational way. So, you know, the field is always very well attended. There's 150, 200 people that go along to them, and there's plenty of reason to go along to those field days around. You know, it's not only around the farm. You go to a Dexel field day, or sorry, a Dairy NZ field day, and you get a lot of production data and that sort of thing. But it goes through the whole environment, governance, and the structures that are in place to allow those farm managers to be successful in those properties.
That wraps up our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. I'd like to thank my guests John Janssen and Rob Macnab. And thanks to you too for watching. Remember to check out my blog online at country99tv.co.nz. I love hearing from you. Remember, next week we'll be at the Mystery Creek Field Days. Be sure to drop by and say g'day and tell all your friends and family that they'll be able to watch us for free on Sky from June 15th through to the 18th as a special Field Days taster of Country 99 TV. That's right, watch us for free on Channel 99 Sky from June 15th through to June 18th. Catch you next week, and in the meantime, keep on talking straight.